Luton Town suffered their first relegation in 15 years last season, but the good news is that while the last one was out of the Football League in 2009, this one was back into the Football League from the Premier League in 2024. Rob Edwards' side look like they've got a bit of a squad in place that could put them in a good position to challenge right away, and I'm sure they're going to add to their squad as one of the best run clubs in the country. But where do they need to improve, and what's required for the Hatters to make sure they're in that top six next season and possibly even challenging for the top two? That's all we're going to be discussing. All that is what we're going to be discussing, should I say, on this summer deep dive. Yes, welcome along to the latest EFL debate summer deep dive. One of 72 we're doing across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. Already the full set for League Two uploaded to YouTube and to Spotify, a few for League One as well. So go check those out and get yourself subscribed. For now, delighted to be joined by YouTuber Lewis Williams, who's also a Luton Town fan. Lewis, thanks so much for joining me this afternoon. Really appreciate your time. How close are Luton Town to having a squad, do you think, that's capable of challenging for an instant return to the Premier League?
I feel like, sorry, I feel like there needs a few signings definitely need to be done, especially in the midfield area. That's where we are extremely weak in after losing Barkley to Villa recently, and then also, of course, Lokonga, his loan deal is now over. We're very light. We were light last season in the Premier League in that department. Not enough quality, especially when we lost Lokonga. You know, we really did lack a bit of quality, and Nakamba was injured for half a season as well. So we need to add a few more bodies in that midfield. Luke Berry also has gone. He's gone to Charlton under Nathan Jones. So yeah, the midfield at the moment definitely needs to be looked at. If I think on top of my head, you've got Nakamba, Clark, and Pelly. That's just not enough. We also got Alan Campbell, but Edwards, I don't think, is a fan of him. So yeah, you need at least maybe 3 or 4 midfielders to come in this summer window.
Talk to me. I think many people are probably going to be quite familiar by now about how well run Luton Town are. The people like Wilkinson, Gary Sweet as well, Jay Sossick you got on recruitment, Mick Harford does an amazing job. You must feel as a Luton Town fan you're very lucky to have some of the people that you've got out of that football club.
100%. I feel like what the bad stuff that happened to us in 2008, 2009, even the few years before that, before we actually got taken over by real fans and supporters of the football club, we kind of need this bad stuff to happen to know what to do better, if that makes sense. So, and the way it's gone about, we're such a forward-thinking club. We're always thinking about, the next season after rather than what's currently happening. So plans are already in place. It is nice because the club's so well looked after now, and full well every decision what the club makes. It's coming from a fan's perspective. They want the club to do well. They just don't want anything bad to happen, and they're always trying to stay protected of the club. You're looking at other clubs now in the Football League, and you just worry for some of them, especially the ones that are not fan owned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very, very good position to be in, to have a club that is run by people who care so much about the club, and yet it's also run by people who are really intelligent and outward looking, and a club that sort of leans into change and modernisation as well. Because often I find clubs only have one side of it. It's like they might have people who really care about the club, but who are kind of might be a little bit set in their ways, or you have people who are kind of coming in from the outside with brand new ideas, but maybe don't necessarily have that same connection. Whereas I think Luton have the best of both worlds, which is wonderful, and it's a fantastic platform for Rob Edwards. Talk to me about the work Rob Edwards has done over the last couple of years.
It's been brilliant ever since he's came in. You can't knock what he's done. He made a few adjustments to what Nathan had. What Nathan had at the club wasn't bad. We were doing well. But in the season which we did go up, we did kind of start a bit slowly. Things weren't ticking as much as we probably would have liked. But Edwards, he came in, he made one or two tweaks, and the rest is obviously history. You know, we go on to win promotion. We beat Watford, which was fantastic. Go get to the final at Wembley. You know, it took a penalty shootout to beat Coventry because both teams were pretty much on the same level. You couldn't separate us apart. And then in the Premier League, all the fans wanted was to give it a good go, and we did exactly that. We fell short. We lacked a little bit of quality in certain areas. We had an injury crisis, which I don't think gets spoken about enough. I know a lot. The cliche is, "Oh, the fans are behind them" and all that. We had that quite a lot throughout the season, but you know, we were competing to the very end, and I'm pretty sure if we didn't have an injury crisis, especially in the defensive part, which is probably the most important thing for any team that's trying to stay up in a division, you need your defenders to stay fit. If we
Mhm.
had our defenders fit and we were fully strengthened at the back, we could have gave ourselves even more of a chance, even without the point deductions which Everton and Forest got. Forget about that. We could have actually stayed within it if we had those players fit. But unfortunately, it weren't meant to be. But what I am liking about Edwards is he does notice things weren't going right in the Premier League season, but we adapted and we changed and we became a side that, you know what, we can't defend for 90 minutes, so we're going to go at teams. And we did exactly that. We were ruthless, we were fearless, aggressive from the front. And I'm really excited to see what he does this year because this is the first time now where he's not forced to play a certain way, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Did I just go then? Sorry. Um,
You sort of went sideways.
sorry, I'm holding my phone. I'm trying to stay as not moving at all. But this season is the first time where he's going to he can play whatever system he wants this year. You know,
Mhm.
when he first came in, he wasn't going to change much under Nathan. And then in the Premier League, you've got to play a certain way to stay in the division. Now you're back in a division where arguably we're going to be one of the teams up there. It's going to be really, really, really interesting to see what the actual system is going to be because I don't know what he's going to play. I
Oh,
can
well,
have a
I would.
guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be either 3-4-1-2 or 3-4-2-1. Because at Forest Green Rovers, which is the only other long-term job that he's had,
Yeah,
um, he played 3-4-1-2 with super attacking wing backs and then a pressing number 10 and yeah, two up top. And it looks like last season it was more of a 3-4-2-1. So what I'm curious about is whether he's going to go with two number 10s in the championship or whether he thinks because it's dropping down a league, he's going to revert to that strike partnership of Carlton Morris and Elijah Adebayo, like who linked up superbly in 22-23. But obviously, that's a case of keeping hold of both of them as well.
yeah, yeah. It'd be interesting because we've got the wingers which we've got at the football club. You know, you got Chio Ogbeni, Townsend, Chong, Brown. You know, you got to try and keep those players happy. We don't. I wouldn't say we've got a number 10. You know, Courtney Woodrow can probably play a little bit deeper. But realistically, I don't think we've got a natural number 10, if that makes
Okay.
sense. I see Chong as a winger, not as a centre mid in the middle.
Hmm.
He's so much more dangerous out wide.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean the nuances of Edwards' system at Forest Green was that the wing backs actually were the ones that had more creative freedom than the number 10. So they had number 10 called Ebu Adams. He sometimes played deeper, but normally he was number 10. And basically his job was mainly about the pressing and joining the front two, being aggressive against the ball. But neither he nor either of the central midfielders had too much creative freedom, whereas the wing backs were super high up the pitch. So I reckon you could probably get away with having somebody like Chirag Benny who's so explosive and quick and direct. I think you would say pin him high up the pitch, keep him high and wide, so you've always got that outlet. I think he could be really dangerous, and if you can keep hold of Alfie Doughty, probably the same with him.
yeah, I honestly don't think many of our players will go because everyone's under contract. I think Alfie could be one that will go. If
Mm-hmm.
anyone's going to go, I think it will probably be Alfie because there's strong rumours there. It's been reported that Brentford and maybe even Tottenham are looking at him. And obviously, if you know what modern day football clubs do now, they look at the data, they look at the stats, and he's right up there. You know, he was one of the most creative left wing backs in the Premier League. So that's definitely going to get a bit of interest. But everyone's under contract at Luton, apart from Gabe Osho, who we may actually end up losing to Sheffield
Mhm.
United, which is strong rumours there, but we don't know what's happening with their takeover. So we can be a bit aggressive. We can go, if you want our player, you've got to give us X amount of money, then which gives us more of an opportunity to replace that player with someone even better. But we're not a club that's short of money now. With these parachute payments for the first time ever, we can be a little bit ruthless in this window, I think.
Does it feel Luton Town have been underdogs, I would say, for much of the last few years, Lewis? Um, Probably the last time you were real favourites would be back when you were down in League Two, when most seasons you were one of the favourites to go up. You were maybe quite fancied in the season you won the title, but not necessarily one of the most favourites. So is it kind of is it funny going back to having that favourite status, not but at championship level as well? That must be a sort of an unusual feeling, maybe.
I've seen mixed reviews, to be fair. I've seen a lot of clubs still yet again belittle Luton again. Your clubs like Middlesbrough, your Stokes, the big clubs that spent many years in the Premier League, still look at clubs like Luton and go, actually, we should be doing better than them. And feel I know
Yeah,
I feel like they need to get hit in a wall basically and just actually look at what they're seeing on the pitch.
yeah.
Um, I still think we're disrespected. I really do. But that's fine. I don't mind that. I was chatting to my friends on the weekend, and our Luton was not one of the names that was 100% going to be up there. It was we'd be in and around it, but
Mm,
not 100% going to be in the top two, because you've
yeah.
got your clubs like your Burnleys or West Brom going to kick on this year. You
Mm,
know, I feel like this season in the Championship, it's a lot more wide open, and you're
mhm,
waiting to see what these clubs who have been in the division for a while now, who have been outside, who haven't been in the Premier League for a couple of seasons, what do they do? Are they
mm.
going to kick on this year, or is it going to be the same clubs back up again?
Yeah. I think being well run is so important. I get the thing about the gates and the fan. I'm not saying you've got a small fan base, but probably on one of the smaller ones, if you like, in terms of like Sheffield United, for example. But there's other clubs who have big fan bases but aren't actually that well run. So I'd actually think I'd rather make more out of your resources by being really smart than actually having the sort of the wherewithal but actually not really using it. So I think your operation is really strong. So that's what gives that's what would give me some optimism about Luton going into next season. So goalkeeping situation then, Lewis. Thomas Kaminski, how important do you think he's going to be?
It's going to be extremely important. We're really actually covered in the goalkeeper department. We've got Krul, we've got Walton, who went out on loan in Scotland and won promotion, kept 20 clean sheets. We're still keeping a hold of Shea. He signed a new deal. He's been at the club since League Two days, so he knows
Mhm.
everything about the club. So you've got four goalkeepers who I think can all play at this level. But
Right.
if no one was watching Luton last season, Thomas Kaminski made so many saves. I'm absolutely gobsmacked that before we signed him, Blackburn weren't playing him regularly. I know he can't play out from the back and do the fancy stuff, what modern goalkeepers can do now, but the shots he saves are just unbelievable. But he needs a good defense in front of him. We need to have a consistent back line. That's the one thing we need to look at. Well, I say one thing: midfield and defense is the two areas which we've got to get right this summer. We've got so many injury-prone defenders. It is a concern for me,
Mhm.
because it makes me want us to sign extra defenders just in case we lose a couple, because we just know that they're going to get injured at some point.
Mm.
Um, so if he's got a consistent backline in front of him, he will obviously smash a load of clean sheets, because I think last year he only got one or two, and I
Mm.
felt sorry for him because there weren't much he could really do.
Okay, so we know Thomas Kaminski is an amazing shot stopper and going to be one of the best goalkeepers in the championship, right? But in terms of, you mentioned distribution there, is it the case where he can get to a 5 or 6 out of 10 on distribution and just do enough, or do you think it is a serious limitation in his game?
The thing is, when I just don't see us playing like Pep, the Man City style of play. So I think you can get away with it. It's I know when we talk about modern day goalkeepers with their passing, they don't need to be unreal with the ball at their feet. All you've got to do is make sure you give it to your centre halves, you know, and don't put them under pressure. Give it to their feet. It's just
But
basic
Lewis,
stuff.
what about let's give you a scenario here. What about if the defence is trying to play out from the back, but they come under pressure, so they've got to go back to the goalkeeper. Then the goalkeeper, then their ability, their composure, and ability to make the right decisions in possession becomes more important. And let's consider Luton are going to be one of the a team that's got to try and win games this season and play on the front foot. So the ability to progress the ball is going to be become more important in the championship potentially.
Yeah, but there's other ways to do it. Like I think Sam Allardyce is very vocal on this, and he was known for playing this long ball mentality. It's using common sense as a goalkeeper. When's the right moment to do it and when's not? We've got two very physical and dominant centre forwards in Morris and Adebayo who win a lot of battles in the air. There's other ways to progress the ball upfield. Players can play off Adebayo and off Morris, and that caused Premier League teams so many problems last year.
But what about let's say you've got I agree Morrison and Adebayo are very physical and very good, but I'm thinking if you've got a goalkeeper who's got really good distribution and can pick them out with the ball to their feet when they come under pressure, that would be a massive advantage in terms of giving yourselves an outlet. Whereas if Thomas Kaminski's going to sort of vaguely aim for Morrison and Adebayo, but maybe not quite pick them out accurately, you then risk losing a bit of territory.
Of course, but the whole point of like we had being a Premier League side, hundreds and hundreds of goalkeepers at your disposal.
Mm-hmm.
This was something that would 100% would have been looked at in terms of how we want to play with our style of football. The board, the recruitment team, obviously, and Rob Evers must see something in Kaminsky that makes you think
Mm-hmm.
actually he probably can do something. He can
Yeah.
he can start these the attack
Mhm.
to say. Um, but like I say, like there's other ways to do it. It
Mhm.
doesn't like last year when I was watching him play. Yeah, there were times where I was like, "Oh God, he's having a poor day today with his kicking," but it wasn't really a concern for me. I don't think many goals like happened due to him not doing what he was meant to be doing from the back. If that makes sense.
Well, not
I can't think of
mm.
many. So
Okay. Yeah, I'm not
of course,
saying.
next season it's going to be a lot more in the championship because we're going to be dominant. We're going to have more of the ball,
Mm.
but I just don't think it doesn't worry me. And if it
Yeah.
does, and if it's going to be a problem, then we'll have to sign another goalkeeper because none of the other goalkeepers can do it either. That's the
Right.
thing.
Okay.
No, we don't have a ball playing goalkeeper. So
Mhm.
that's what makes me think you don't give James Shea a new contract if you're going to play that way. You don't sign Tim Krul last year. You don't sign Kaminsky last year, and you don't sign Walton the year before. So
Mhm.
all these goalkeepers don't really do it. So then we must be doing. We must have a plan in place that
Okay.
allows. That's. I'm just
Interesting.
putting two and two together
No,
here.
no, sure. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Well, yeah, I agree. I don't have a concern about it in terms of the risk of conceding goals, but I think you've got to be very mindful of if you're going to give the ball away and whether you're going to sort of cede a bit of territory in games, and the accumulation of that can sometimes lead to goals conceded indirectly. Again, I'm not saying Thomas Kaminski's got to be this amazing sweeper keeper, but I feel like if he can get from a 3 or a 4 out of 10 on distribution to a 5 or a 6 and just do enough, then I think that would make a big difference. But we talk about ball playing. I really like Mads Anderson as a ball player. I think he's very, very talented in that regard. I've seen him in League One with Barnsley a couple of seasons ago, and his long range passing, he can really ping a ball to the other flank, almost a bit like a midfielder at times. So I imagine you're looking forward to seeing that in the championship.
Well, yeah, because he was one of the players that last season that just wasn't fit. It just kept getting kept getting injuries, and then when he eventually returned back, picked up another one. So I don't really think it'll probably feel like he's a brand new centre half this summer.
Mhm.
It really will do because we didn't see much of him last year, and we definitely missed him, especially when at one point we were only had one fit centre back in the Prem. So.
Mm.
100%. I can't really give an opinion on him because we've literally not seen enough from him.
Yeah.
So yeah, this season, if he can repeat what he did at Barnsley, then fantastic. Because when he was at Barnsley in the Championship, you knew he was a Championship defender. It was just
Mhm.
the question marks were, can he do it in the best division in England?
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. No, but I'm really excited to see what Anderson can do, and so fingers crossed for him. As we look at things right now, you've obviously got Tom Holmes there, you've got Mads Anderson, you've got Ted and Menji, you've got Reece Burke, and you've got Amari Bell. A bit of few doubts maybe over Tom Lockyer in terms of whether he's going to be ready, I imagine. So, which from the other five that I've mentioned would be your starting back three for this season? Do you think?
Personally, I think we need to sign a left-sided centre half.
Okay.
I know we've in the last couple of years we've played Dan Potts there, who we've now released,
Hmm.
and Amari Bell. Now I'm not Amari's biggest fan. He is good at progressing the ball with his feet because naturally, when you are a wing back, that's what you're doing. You're always progressing with the ball.
Hmm.
So when you transfer that as a centre half, you are going to look a little bit better because you're naturally really good at progressing. What I worry is his defensive positioning, getting out battled in aerial in aerial battles, and I just feel like he's just not consistent enough as a centre half. Lots of Luton fans will probably disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But personally, a left-sided centre half should be one of the top things on the recruitment list. Aside from that, that's left-sided back of our defensive line.
Hmm.
I think when he's fit, and I do think if he can stay fit, Reece Burke is the right-sided centre back. And then after his breakout season in the centre back role last year, I think it's Menji. I think Mans Anderson, because of the injuries last year, has to fight his way into the team. How
Yeah.
he does that, I don't know. But after the season which Menji had, and how good Reece Burke is as a right-sided centre back, the others need to fight their way in.
I'm going to disagree with you on that because I can completely understand how Ted Menji is a very physical centre half, and I think his athleticism is clearly a big attraction. However, for me, I think if you want to play the kind of football that Rob Edwards likes, for me, Mads Anderson's passing range is going to be a massive advantage, especially when we've talked about a goalkeeper that isn't necessarily a ball playing specialist. I mean, maybe you'll tell me I'm wrong, but I don't see Ted Menji as a particularly progressive defender. I don't think he's bad on the ball, but I don't think he's going to be as progressive as Anderson. Much bigger physical specimen than Anderson, but for me, Mads would get the edge. But I know it's harder to maybe say that if you've not seen him play yet.
So with Menji, his passing ability was very impressive.
Oh, really? Okay.
He's very comfortable with the ball at his feet. And
Okay.
after the season he's had in the Prem, he's another player which could potentially go this summer because of his age as well, and how dominant he is in the air and everything, just how good he was last year. Um, I think Luton fans will be scratching their heads and asking how on earth is he not in the team if he's not
Okay.
starting. If so, I think it's now the question: if he's fit, he starts.
All
I
right.
think it's as simple as that now. He's cemented that place in the team, especially after last year. That's why I understand your points about Anderson. You've probably seen him a lot more than I have,
Mm-hmm.
but I can only go by what I saw last year from Menji. And Menji, for me, if he stays this season, he's playing.
Okay.
It's just as simple as that, really.
Okay, I might need to update my Ted and Menji opinions. Then, haven't really watched much of the Premier League, so maybe I'm a little bit behind schedule on that one. So, um, talk to me about Reece Burke then, Lewis. I mean, is there a world where Menji could play on the right of a back three and Anderson could come in the middle? I feel like I'm seeming like I'm determined to get Matt Anderson in the team here. What do you think about Reece Burke?
If he stays fit, he's a Premier League defender, but he doesn't
Oh,
stay fit.
right.
He just doesn't stay fit. He every season this is his fourth season at Luton, I want to say, and he's been injured every year for long periods of time. So look, Mans Anderson's going to play if he stays fit. because Reece Burke will guarantee get an injury this season. It's just unfortunately our defense. I just don't know what's going on about it. I don't know if they work too hard. I don't. I just honestly don't know. But they pick up injuries. So if one centre half like Menji did last year, Menji was signed as a squad player, yet he became a starting 11 player because of these injuries. So all you've got to do, if you're a centre half at Luton, is just stay fit. You're going to get 30 games in a season by the looks of it because they just don't know how to keep fit. It's really is frustrating just watching us because a consistent backline, it does wonders. That's how teams win leagues and that's how you stay up in divisions when you've got a consistent backline that can defend.
Yeah, that's going to be really important, I'm sure. Tom Holmes, what do you think of him?
I'm delighted because I believe he's every time I've watched him play, I think wow, this is a defender that knows how to defend, and for me I look at him as definitely a replacement for Lockyer. I see a lot of similarities between the two. I would have actually wanted him to sign and permanently in the January. So instead of loaning him back out to Reading, we would have kept him because we needed defenders at the time. But every time I've seen him play for Reading against us, he's always performed really well. So I'm looking forward to seeing him play in this upcoming season.
Nice. So I think you're in a good position, even if Tom doesn't feature next season, which would probably be my expectation. And best luck with him to him, whatever the future holds. But I think you've got one, two, three, four. You've got five defenders there, and then bringing in a left-sided centre half. And what I quite like is that if Tom Holmes, Mads Anderson, Ted Mengi, Reece Burke, and Amari Bell, any of them start, you at least wouldn't be disappointed. Some might be better than others, but they're all decent championship players at least. And then so you add one more to that. I think that puts you defensively in a pretty strong position. So, Chirag Benny, Lewis, how dangerous do you think he can be for Luton Town in the championship next season?
What a great signing he was, by the way. Free from Rotherham. Like, you cannot complain. I think we just need to get more out of him in terms of goal contributions. So getting more goals, more assists. But that pace, the agility on him, he picked up he was the fastest player in the Premier League last year, which
Right.
was
Huh,
just insane.
that's incredible.
Um, and he's the reason why Luke Shaw got injured, by the way. That's why Luke Shaw's not playing for England, because Chio literally knocked the ball around him and Shaw pulled his hamstring. So that's it's just trying to catch up with him. He's really good. I really like him. Defensively as well, despite being a very attacking player, he does do the dog work, which at Luton I think you have to do. Although you may be good on the ball, off the ball you've got to do it, and he does exactly that. We were gutted when we missed him last season because he got injured towards the back end after the March internationals, and his pace, you do miss it. Especially for counter attacks, it's super important because all it takes was Ross Barkley in the midfield, through ball out wide to Chio, and that's it. He's bombed down that wing, either across into the box or pull back into whoever's in the box, and you're looking at 1-0 up or 2-0 or whatever it was at the time. But yeah, Chio, happy days. But if we can get more goals out of him, more assists out of him, then great. And he's in his prime. He's entering his prime now. I think he's 26, 27.
Mhm.
So perfect time. I think he'll have a good season.
Let's hope that's the case. I've currently got him written down as a right wing back option, but what I'm wondering is, Lewis, when you're going away to some of the top sides in the league, is there a world where he actually plays maybe as part of a front three or maybe even in a front two, and you use him as a real counter attacking outlet against sides that push their fullbacks high up the pitch?
Yeah, we did last year. He was sometimes part of the front three,
Mhm.
and he had Isaac Kapore behind him. Um, if we were to do that this year, he have Hashi behind him, one of our new Japanese signings.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I can definitely see a world of that happening.
Mhm.
What's really good is he is quite versatile, so I'm really happy with what I've seen so far.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, he could could be a big player in the Championship this season. You mentioned Hashika there, Lewis. In terms of right wing back spot, does he have what's required going forward to take on that extra attacking and creative freedom to sort of maximise that in that role?
It's really hard to judge him because he was thrown straight into the deep end in January. Like I said, with us having an injury crisis, he was playing as a centre back, so I can't really fully judge him as what he as a right wing back because he didn't really play there for
Mhm.
us. He was playing more as a right sided centre back, so he's another one who could play in the back three. But we have signed him as a right sided wing back, so this is the time where I want to see him. But he is quite weak, quite easily gets knocked off the ball. So I hope he's been doing a really good gym routine in the summer because, yeah, he worried me a little bit. But I don't think I can judge him on what I saw in the Premier League. I think what he does now is where I start judging him as a player and what he can do.
Mm. Yeah, well, hopefully he can make a big contribution. So central midfield. You mentioned midfield needs strengthening because you've got Marvelous Nakamba there, who we'll come on to in more detail in a minute. But you've also got other players who you've got Mpanzu, who's very much your Luton Town stalwart, who's been there for over a decade. But you've also got Alan Campbell, who we think Rob Edwards not a fan of, and Louis Watson, who's still young. So again, are we looking at another at a midfield partner for Nakamba if you can keep hold of him?
Yeah, Nakamba's staying. He was out for the season in January. He started in the Prem. At the beginning of the season, but then the style of play just wasn't really suiting us at all. Really,
Mhm.
we going forward. We just didn't look threatening whatsoever, and we was just conceding far too many goals. So we switched the system a bit, which then meant that Nakamba weren't in the team, and we played with two centre mids, which was Lokonga and Barkley. Now the question is, can Nakamba do what Barkley and Lokonga can do? I don't think he can because I think he's more of a defensive mid, sits in front of the back line. So there's a few question marks there with Nakamba on what he can do. Because I feel like when you are playing in a two-man centre midfield, you need to be really good at progressing with the ball. I just don't see him as that type of player.
Mhm.
So I'd be interested to see what. This is why I'm really interested to see what the system Rob Evers goes with this season because
Yeah.
if he result back to what he did when we got promoted with that
Mhm.
system, or does he carry on with the system which we were playing in the Premier League? That's that's what I'm interested to see.
Sure. If I had to guess, I would say that the deeper midfielders, if you are going to play 3-4-1-2, are actually going to be quite defensive minded because, as I mentioned, the wing backs are going to operate really high up, and you've got your number 10 pressing high. So basically, what the central midfielders have got to do is recycle. You've got to recycle the ball well enough, of course, and look after it. But it's about sort of covering enough ground because two-man you've got to cover more ground as part of a two-man midfield than as part of a three-man midfield. So it's really about keeping a lid on things in midfield rather than having loads of creative freedom. So I think Marvelous Nakamba can do that job. And then I'm not sure. That's probably why I'd question Adam Campbell because from what I gather, he's probably at his best when he's got freedom to go and press. He might suit the number 10 role possibly, but yeah, I don't know that he's going to suit the deep midfield spot because I think he'd have to be more disciplined out of possession, and whether he's got that in his locker, I'm not sure. So it seems like you're going to need a deep line playmaker to operate alongside Nakamba and someone who can look after the ball but also cover the ground as well.
Yeah, I don't. I honestly don't see Alan Campbell being a Luton player by the end of the transfer window. If I'm being honest with you,
Okay,
Watson will go. He's not impressed on his loan spells
right.
enough, so that makes you even more light in the midfield. Yeah, but I do agree. If I think Nakamba he can do that. What you're saying, he can do that.
Mhm.
Recycle. And do the defensive side of things. We loved it when he was doing that when we had him on that loan spell. But yeah, we need someone alongside him who can, maybe be a bit more creative and pick things out in the midfield. But that's why I mean that's why I'm saying we need two or three midfielders in. It's a real area which we need to look at, and I'm looking at two players in particular who have been released in Shannon Baptiste from Brentford, who I really liked. He was one player which, when he was at Oxford, was fantastic, and then
Yeah.
even with Brentford in the Championship. And the other one, which I just don't see coming, but I don't know if we could persuade him, is Alan Brown from Preston.
Interesting. Yeah, I think Alan Brown's somebody who plays like he's a fan on the pitch. You know what I mean? He's so energetic, he's so aggressive, he drives the team forward. So I think it'd be really exciting in that point of view. But I also feel like the role suits someone who's, yeah, I think you've got to cover a lot of ground. To be fair, so yeah, I think that could suit Alan Brown. That'd be really interesting to see. But then you need a bit of yeah defenders to be real ball players, especially your wide centre halves. They've got to get into those channels and try and combine in those wide areas. So that'll be interesting to see. So the number 10 spot, quite a few sort of contenders for the number 10 spots, possibly singular or plural, because you've got McAtee and Pereira, who are back from their loan spells. You've got Corley Woodrow, who we've spoken about, can play deeper. You've got Tahith Chong, who can play as the number 10. You got Jordan Clark as well, who did quite well in the Premier League last season. And you've still got Andros Townsend as well. So a lot of players to look at there.
Yeah, I think the massive question mark, and a lot of Luton fans are asking this, is how who out of McAtee and Taylor, because Joe Taylor is also returned back from his loan spell up
Yeah,
top. Which one of those stay, or are they both going to stay? Because
I think Taylor's got to stay for me personally.
well, yeah, I think he's been excellent. You know, he's loan spell in League Two and also in League One with Lincoln. To do that was an unbelievable achievement. But he's a natural striker, in my
Yeah,
opinion. He's like
yeah, he's
full on
not 10.
striker. Yeah. Whereas McAtee, yeah, he can play. He could play as a striker, but he can also play as a number 10, and he can
Mhm.
also play out wide. And he can play it like that little bit of a false nine striker as well. And you saw his
Mm.
goals, what he scored for Barnsley. Some of them are unbelievable techniques.
Yeah.
And he's a real technical player. So I do think McAtee will stay. And he does look good. He's been doing his off season program, and I've seen the videos. He looks ready, and he looks like he could get a few games in for Luton. But like, yeah, lots of competition there. I do think Clark will be a lot more deeper. I don't think he'll be a 10. Um,
Okay. Right.
that's started to happen. That was happening last year. He got injured in pre-season last year, and when he came back, he looked well off the pace a bit.
Mhm.
I don't know if the injury really damaged that, hammered that side of things. So it'd be interesting to see what he comes back this year. But he was playing a lot deeper last year. Chong, I prefer him wide. I thought he was unbelievable out wide. When we played him in the middle, he was a bit weak. Easy, got brushed off the ball far too easy. Where I think
Right.
out wide, when he's got that freedom and that space,
Is that 1v1 ability as well, isn't it, Lewis? That dribbling
yes,
ability that becomes easier out wide rather than down the middle.
yeah, I felt he struggled in the mid, if I'm being
Okay.
honest with you. I think out wide, he was so much more dangerous, caused teams plenty more problems in those wide positions. Townsend the same. When we
Mm.
say like we're playing with maybe two number 10s, those two number 10s do drift out wide because we were
Right.
doing it last year where Adebayo would be the striker and Morris would be one of the cams
Oh,
behind
okay. Right.
with another winger, but often they would come in, drift out, push forward, kind of like two freedom roles behind a striker, and they didn't really stick in a position. They just kept
Okay.
moving across that, the top three areas of the pitch.
Mhm.
That's what was happening a lot last year. So it'd be interesting to see what we do. But yeah,
Yeah.
lots of competition there.
Well, with that in mind, then let's talk about Teeth Chong because um, if we assume that it's going to be either a 3-4-2-1 or a 3-4-1-2, I think Teeth Chong as a wing back might be too much of a risk because
Yes.
he's not going to be strong enough defensively. So I'm thinking actually he might play as a number 10, but would you then give him the freedom to drift out wide and just almost have free reign and make him the one that you try and build the team around? Because he could go into those wide areas and pick out those spaces to ball carry without necessarily having to be in the middle so much.
100%. I honestly think he's going to be one of the best players in the championship this season. He's one player who I think is going to tear it apart. What I saw last year in the Premier League, especially as the season got on, at the start, a lot of fans were like, "Oh my god, this isn't the same player which we saw," because he had a standout performance for Birmingham against us where
Yes.
they beat us 5-0, and that's where our fans really know Chong from. But in the Premier League towards the back end of the season when he was in this wide position. That I think the game was Brentford. We got beat 5-1, or it was against Bournemouth when we won 2-1. He absolutely tore the team apart. I need to actually find out which team it was, but I've never seen it like that before. Like I've seen Barkley like dictate play and control the game, but we kept giving the ball to Chong, and he was taking on 2, 3, 4 players with ease. And if we can get that on a consistent basis next season, I really think you're looking at someone who's
Mm.
going to hit double figures in goal contributions. I honestly really believe that.
Mm. So it's not a question of is Tahith Chong capable of being one of the best players in the championship. It's how do you make Tahith Chong one of the best players in the championship?
Yeah,
Because you've
I
got to
think
give
he's got
him.
it.
Okay, so
Yeah,
he's got the
he's got it.
ability, but you've got to find a role that's going to maximise his strengths. Might not be straightforward initially with this system, but if you can give him a role, especially a bit of free reign in that number 10 role, then he could come alive and get 10 goals, 10 assists, or something like that because he's certainly got the ability. But then the strike position. I mean, we've seen 2 seasons ago what Carlton Morris and Elijah Adebayo can do at this level. That's a known quantity. But what I think is really exciting about your attacking options is you've got Jacob Brown also there, who's going to run all day for you. He's such an athlete. And you got Joe Taylor, who's just had an amazing season in the lower leagues and was fantastic for Lincoln in the second half of last season. So, I think that striker position is a really exciting area.
Yeah, 100%. It's the one area which we don't need to bring any attacking players in. I at the moment, every rumor which keeps happening and it's linked with Luton, it have all been attacking players, which makes no sense to me because our attacking options are just incredible. They really are incredible, and Rob Edwards is going to have headaches on what ones to pick because they are. It's such a good attack. You know, we're not including Woodrow in the conversation. You know, Woodrow may have to go because I don't think he may even get any game time. Um, I don't know how you keep all those attackers happy. We may lose Adebayo because of what he did last year in the Premier League. There is a lot of interest. There is interest there, but there's so many options. There's so many things you can do. Different ideas. It's exciting.
Lewis, I'm going to give you a bit of a hot take here, which is if you lose, was it Adebayo who you said was linked
Yeah.
away? Yeah, Adebayo's linked away. If you lose Adebayo, I actually think that the dynamic could end up working out even more favourably with Carlton Morris and Joe Taylor up top. And let me explain that. I think Morris and Adebayo are actually quite similar types of strikers, whereby they're both going to be at their most threat when you're getting balls into the box, which you did so well in the promotion-winning season from the Championship, and that made you a very dangerous crossing side. However, what you get with Joe Taylor is that transitional ability to cut teams open and stand on the shoulder of the last defender and get in behind. He's so agile, he's so quick, and he's such a potent finisher that he's shown in the lower leagues. So it is a bit of a step up for Joe Taylor, so he's not as established as somebody like Elijah Adebayo, not by a long shot. But I'm actually wondering if the equilibrium of the attack where you have Tahith Chong as your free roaming ball carrying creator, you have Carlton Morris as your industrious hold up front man who can get on the end of crosses, and you have Joe Taylor as your poacher who's always getting in behind. I think the dynamic of that attack could come together better than it actually might have done with Tahith Chong behind Morrison Adebayo, because Morrison Adebayo aren't really going to stretch defences in the same way that Joe Taylor might be able to. So actually, you might be able to create more space for somebody like Tahith Chong with that variety of those attacking options.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, really, and that's why I'm really excited, because if we get injuries, say for example Adebayo gets injured or he does go, you've kind of got an answer already. You know, it's good to have multiple answers to problems rather than just having maybe one solution. I rather have a manager get a headache every single week because he doesn't know what solution to pick from, because he's got multiple great solutions, rather than one solution and nothing else as a backup choice. So I'm extremely excited on what could potentially happen. If Adebayo goes, I'm not going to be worried. It's going to be a question mark for the board. Do we bring in a replacement, or is the replacement already here?
Mhm.
That's the question they've got to answer. But it's exciting. It really is exciting, and for the first time I probably haven't probably saying this. It's the one window we don't need to bring an attacking player. You know,
Mhm.
look at the opposite area of the pitch,
Yeah.
get that right, get the
Mhm.
middle bit right, and then I think you're fine.
It sounds like then one of the reasons why you maybe didn't score so many goals in the Premier League was probably because progressing the ball to those attacking players was a bit of a challenge, because partly because of the level and partly because of whatever question marks in terms of ball progression that can be improved this window. But it does seem like you've got the attacking options that can make you dangerous in the Championship. Um, before we move on to expectations, I want to ask you about any young players that are coming through the academy, because the academy is doing quite well at the moment, right?
Yes, well, they got thrown in towards into some Premier League games. We've got one lad in particular, Joe Johnson, who's
Mhm.
playing for England at the moment in the youth ranks. Um, at the moment, I think if we were a team that's probably going to aim for mid-table, we could see them.
Mhm.
But I think it's a lot difficult to throw them in a side that is pushing for a promotion.
Mhm.
I always say, if a youngster isn't going to play 20 games in a season, then you've got to loan him out. You've got to loan him out so he gain men's first team football. Whether that's a lower league loan, a non-league loan, you've got to do something. You can't just let them just sit there and not play games. I know people talk about that Foden, for example, under Pep, and
Mhm.
how he was, developed and brought into the first team. But Foden was playing 20 games a season at least. He was still in and around the team. So
Not initially, though.
yeah, not initially, but it did build up though. Over time, it got better each year. A lot of people
What,
were saying, "Oh, get him out
mm,
quicker and get him on loan."
yeah,
But for me, I just don't. I feel like a player's got to play 20 games. If he isn't, then he's got to go on loan.
I would argue against, or I would probably question that a little bit, Lewis, because I think that the problem with that is that if you say uh, you say we'll have two players for each position and we'll loan out someone that we're not 100% sure can play 20 plus league games. I think the danger that you do that, the danger of that is that you end up blocking the progress, because you might bring in an extra player for one position, so you've got two players for one position. That player might sign on a 2 or 3 year contract, so you've ended up kind of congesting the squad and then actually not having those pathways for those players. Whereas if you bring in a youngster to be your second choice for one position, where you're actually leaving a bit of a pathway open. So if the first choice player gets suspended, gets injured, loses a bit of form, out of favour, whatever, there's then a pathway there for that player to come into the team and prove themselves. And then maybe if you get to January and you think, yeah, we're not quite sure that this player's going to be up to the level, then you might drop into the market and try and get someone else in and loan them out. But I think sometimes actually the better progression plan can be starting by being bold with a progression plan and giving them a chance to start being backups, and then actually give them a chance to grow into the squad, because sometimes players might shoot up in value, and that's how you can get the most money in terms of player sales, which is harder if they've spent 3 years, so they're only into the team. Spent 3 years out on loan, and then they only come into the team when they're 21, and they actually lose a bit of momentum that way sometimes. So I think there's, yeah, I can see your argument, but I think sometimes actually you've got to be a bit brave with youth progression.
Yeah, I understand your point, but I just don't. Obviously, I don't know how Joe Johnson is ranked within the team. I don't know how we rank our youngsters within it.
What position is Joe Johnson? Sorry,
So he is a wing back.
wing back, right
He
wing back or left?
he could play both. And
Okay,
to be fair, I've seen him play both, but I think he's right wing back at the moment. I think this is his main position, is right wing back.
okay.
But I understand your point, but for me, it's difficult. I've seen so many from a Luton fan in the last couple of years when we've had really good youngsters. A lot of these youngsters have just not been given an opportunity, and
Mhm,
that and when you actually look at what their career is, they end up going to a Premier League side with a under 23 or under 21 squad and
mhm,
play in their league, and then they go out on loan, and then before you know it, the football club which they actually originally left has progressed far quicker than what their careers have. I don't mind what we've done with Joe Taylor, for example. Send
mhm,
him out on loan on a 6 month deal. Do a 6 month. See how well he does. Is he good enough for League Two? Is he good enough for whatever league you put him in? If he does really well, then you can reassess your options in January and then go, actually, we'll recall you back because we think you can actually play a few games for us. Or we'll loan you out again and go to the league above. And then if you do really well again, then there's another conversation to have. Actually, you've had two fantastic loan spells there. You've progressed well in two leagues. And before you know it, you're either at the level or you're one league away from where they want you to be.
mhm.
So I think Joe Taylor's a really good example. And I feel like if we can
Yeah.
implement that onto more of our youngsters, then fantastic. But I don't like the fact to sit there and not play at all because there's only so much you can learn. I am a strong believer in you learn more by playing. You know,
Yes.
yes, you can learn more by watching them and being in and around the team, in the dressing room, on the training pitch, but you learn more by playing, in my eyes.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that does make sense. So expectations then, Lewis. Is top six the minimum expectation for Luton Town this season?
I feel like any Premier League team that gets relegated, it has to be top 10. It has to be.
Hmm.
Um, I got laughed at when I said that to my mates on the weekend. They were like, how are you only saying top 10? You should be saying top six." But I don't like putting more expectation on it, more pressure on it. We have to have a good season. You don't give Rob Edwards a 4 year deal and then it goes down, you know, down the drain, and we're not finishing bottom half table.
Hmm.
I think with that attack, which we've spoken about, how good it potentially is,
Hmm.
it's got to be. We've got to be scoring goals, and we've got to be in conversation in going up at some points throughout the season. And I feel like if you look at the teams that have been relegated from the Premier League, you know, Burnley don't have a manager yet. Sheffield United, you don't know what's going on with their recruitment and their ownership. We are in a much better position than those two football clubs right now.
Okay, so
So,
let me give you a theoretical scenario then, Lewis. Let's say Luton Town do finish 10th, but they make lots of progress from the point of view of investing in young players that have shot up in value. So let's say, for example, in this scenario, Ted Menji is now a really valuable player that's going to be worth 8 figures. Joe Taylor's now another really valuable player who scored 20 goals. Let's say in that scenario where the value of the squad has shot up, but Luton Town have finished 10th, would you class it as a good season?
it's tough that because although, yeah, the youngsters have done well on the pitch, you know, it probably isn't as great. Um, it's hard. Um, I'm going to probably say no
Okay.
because we've got established championship players that
Hmm.
know the level, that have been promoted out the level. So I wouldn't. No, I say it needs to be better than that. I
Okay.
would say.
So
Yeah,
we've said so you said top 10, but actually,
yeah.
top six.
It's probably top six, probably in my eyes.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
it
right.
probably is. I just feel like you've got to. I think that attack and with the Premier League money, we've got to be a bit aggressive this summer.
Mhm.
I know we're going to do it really smart, like with under our ownership, but I think deep down, I believe Rob Edwards wants to go back up. And
Mhm.
from listening to his interview, it doesn't sound like top 10 is enough. It needs to be more than that. That's the message what I'm getting. I just don't like. I like just to below my expectation and then just go. Well, I said top 10 at the start, so I can't moan too much. That type of that mentality.
I get
But
you.
I feel like it has to. We've got to be in conversation. We have to be.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, hopefully you can make the final finishing touches. But I agree, you've already got the bulk of a squad there that's more than good enough to challenge, and it's about the sort of 3 or 4 remaining additions. With that in mind, I wanted to look at, obviously it's more than just the first 11 that's going to dictate whether you meet those ambitions, because it's about depth, you might have injuries, you need players to come in. But if we were to say, let's look at how close Luton are to a starting 11 that's capable of A, finishing the top 6, and B, possibly challenging for the top 2. So Thomas Kaminski, would you say yes for him in terms of he's good enough?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. So in terms of a back three, will we be thinking Reece Burke, Ted and Menji, and
A new
I
signing.
guess, yeah, and a new signing. Okay, so we're
Yeah.
currently up to 3 players that are already there in terms of goalkeeper and defence. In terms of wing back, we know Chirag Benny's good enough because we've spoken about him in
Yeah.
glowing terms. Marvelous Nakamba, we look at a yes for him.
Yeah, but we've got left-sided wing back as well,
Mhm.
in Alfie. So,
Absolutely, yeah. If you keep
he'd
hold of
be
him.
yeah. If we keep hold of him, then 100%. We probably need a new left wing back this summer.
Mhm.
Unless we're going to play Amari Bell there. See, we've got a lot of players that can play in multiple positions, but
Mhm.
it's just when you lose a player with a bit of versatility and that can be adaptable in multiple positions, you've then lost lots of positions then when they get injured. So
Mhm.
yeah, probably another left wing back because we let Giles go to Hull,
Mhm.
who weren't really a Luton player. But yeah, Alfie, yeah, definitely left back. If he does stay at the club. Nakamba, see, this is what I mean. If we play the 3-4-2-1 system,
Mhm.
I just don't know if Nakamba plays in it. That the midfield, I've got so many question marks. I really do.
Really,
I
You don't think you're doubting over whether Nakamba would start?
Yeah, I am. I think it all depends. If you was to ask me this question before the season starts, I'll let you. I could probably give you a more cemented answer because I know we'll make signings before then. It all
So what
depends
would
who we bring
be
in.
also right now then? What would be your rationale for thinking Nakamba would start in a 3-4-1-2, but not in a 3-4-2-1?
Because I think he's better just a little bit deeper rather
Okay.
than a little bit further. I think I understand your point about off the ball in the defensive side of things, but when I saw him do it in the Premier League, I know the Premier League and Championship totally different ball game. I didn't. I wouldn't say I didn't like it, but I didn't see enough.
Mhm.
Maybe that's being really overly critical.
Mhm.
Um, But for me to give you a proper answer, those two centre mid roles is up for questions. It really is. It all depends on who we bring in. It's so important that those two player roles there. So I do think we're going to recruit because Ross Barkley and Okonga were massive when they were
Mhm.
both fit. They were played. So
Right.
it'd be interesting to see who we sign this summer, and then I'll be able to
Mm.
give you a more concrete answer. But right now, those two spots are up for grabs for anyone in my eyes.
Interesting. So, if we say that in terms of the players we're super confident are going to be up to the level that you're going to need, I've got Thomas Kaminski, Ted Mengi, Reece Burke, Chirag Bene, Alfie Doughty, Tahith Chong, and Morris and either possibly Adebayo if he stays, and yeah, maybe Joe Taylor, but probably not someone we're super confident in. So that leaves us at about 5 or 6. So that would suggest that actually you're going to need a left-sided centre half, at least another starting midfielder, and possibly another, depending on whether we think Nakamba's going to sort of cut the mustard, and then maybe another striker if Adebayo goes. But Joe Taylor, we like the idea of. So 2 or 3
Yeah,
additions in terms of starting 11 are going to be really important.
100%. And then if personnel go like Alfie, like Menji, then replacing those. But we can be really aggressive in our negotiations there because they're on the contract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a nice position to be in. We've said that top 6 is the expectation, or thereabouts, certainly
Yeah.
challenge. Um, so, what will be the biggest reason to believe that you'll meet your ambitions this season?
I just think, well, we've got the same group,
Mhm.
same group of players, and I think what happened last year, the support which they got from the fans, the togetherness. I've listened to so many player interviews, especially with the players which have left, and they've all talk about how good the dressing room is
Mhm.
and how good, like they're good people. So yeah, okay, being good footballers is a great thing, but being good people is really important. And with Rob Edwards being a very family man, like manager who
Mhm.
cares about you more than the football, I think that makes players want to perform better, makes them want to give him that extra 10%. It's like that in any work environment. You've got a really sound boss. You're going to give him that extra 10% in the workplace,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what we've got at Luton, from right at the top all the
Mhm.
way down. That I haven't heard any bad stuff about Luton, like in the press or you know, in departments. Everyone loves each other. Everyone's got a great family vibe. That is very important. And that's why players like Pelly, who gets a lot of stick from fans because they say he actually isn't good enough as a footballer, or
Mhm.
actually he's one of the key players in the dressing room. He's that one that does the
Culturally.
jokes, the banter, and those types of players are super important. So when in this summer window, we're going to be recruiting players that
Mm.
have that same mold, that same, I want to give that extra 10%. And when we do bring in those types of players in, once they've gelled, once they understand each other, it
Mm.
should then excel. It's very important to keep in the same manager. I feel like
Yeah.
that is essential. Do I think we'll sack him? No. Unless we get relegated, which I cannot see happening. But yeah, everything seems it's in the right place.
Mm.
We just need to get the summer right, get those personnel in, fill those gaps which I think are in the squad, and then we should hopefully have a very successful season. But that's
Yeah.
easy said than done.
Certainly is that role that Pelly Ruddock Kimpanzi does in terms of almost setting the culture behind the scenes and being so influential. It's almost like a position in itself, isn't it? And
Yeah,
he's going to be very tough to replace when you have to one day. Although hopefully you keep him around the club, that'd be nice.
yeah.
Reasons for doubt. What's the biggest reason for doubt?
Um, Maybe just losing too many key players. So losing Adebayo, losing Alfie, losing Menji, potentially losing a couple of others, maybe, and then I think the biggest scare is having a poor window.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest scare because the last, forget the Premier League. Before the Premier League, Luton's windows, all the way back to League Two, you
Mm-hmm.
could easily say 8 out of 10s, 8 out of 10s, 8 out of 10s, or maybe even higher than 8 out of 10. The January transfer window in the Premier League, we only brought in Hashi when we had a lot of money and we could have brought in a few additions. I hope that doesn't repeat itself again.
Mm-hmm.
That's my biggest concern. If we repeat that, I will be worried because,
Although, Lewis, I think it's easy to say that, but I
yeah,
imagine if you're in Mick Harford's office where there's agents trying to get bigger and bigger, agent fees and massive contracts where players and agents are trying to maximise the panic that some clubs have in January, I think it's a very difficult market, and sometimes you don't want to sort of disrupt the wage structure or the financial stability. And I can understand that, if the deals weren't right for the club, then you don't go with them. I appreciate that might have compromised you in terms of the relegation, but I do have some sympathy for the decision makers as well, because it's not easy to get players in January for good value. So
100%. Yeah.
yeah. Give too early for a prediction. Give me a number between 1 and 10 to denote your level of optimism that your ambitions are going to be realised.
What, one as highest or?
No. So 10 is your most optimistic.
I'll give 8. An 8, yeah. 8 solid, yeah. I just, like I say, if we just got to get that personnel that fill those gaps, like everything else is already taken care of. You know, there's no worry about stadium, like new parts of the stadium getting built this year, like we had last year with the new stands. There's a real like excitement amongst the fan base. We're just now waiting for signings to happen now. I can see it on Twitter now. We're being a bit quiet. We normally have made a signing by now,
Yeah.
so we're
Do
just
you
waiting
know
for that
what, though,
first
Lewis?
one.
I think because you've got a lot of players under contract already, it's not like you're far off squad wise. So I think
No, we're not.
if clubs had made loads of signings to get to this squad number, fans would be like, "Yeah, we're really excited. We made so many signings." Whereas I think when Luton have already got a lot of players under contract, it's like, "Why aren't we making any signings?" I think
Yeah.
that's how fans are kind of minded somehow. I think it's. Sometimes it's what you want the new and shiny sort of thing, but
It
no, I think
doesn't help when Rotherham are making about 15 signings, and then
I
you're
know,
like,
yeah,
well, we haven't made
exactly.
a one
They
yet.
needed it, like they released
Yeah.
15 players as well. So yeah, I think that sort of context always helps. But listen, I think it's really exciting to see how Luton get on back in the Championship. Certainly in a good position, and let's see what you can do. Lewis, thanks so much for your insight. It's been a pleasure to join you on this EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive. If you're watching this on YouTube, get yourself subscribed to and leave us a comment as well. Let me know how you think Luton Town are going to get on. If you're listening on Spotify, drop us a review if you've enjoyed this podcast. And this has been the EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive on Luton Town. We'll see you again very, very soon.